mini whiteboards. It's not because they're 16, 17 that they don't like fun competitions. I mean, I can tell you that for GCSE, A-level, they still want to use them, and when I take the box out, it's a revolution. They're so happy and they want to work in groups or in pairs or on their own because they're getting very competitive, and I think it's a great way to motivate them. How to make it fun but also valuable to your literature lesson. A QCM that you'd put on a PowerPoint presentation. So this is an example of a QCM that you can use with a mini whiteboard. So it's based on chapter 8 of Nos et Moi, and it's like a little quiz. So students would have to read the chapter before the lesson, and at the start you take the mini whiteboards and you start the quiz. So you start with the first question. Où est-ce que Nos et Lou se retrouvent pour discuter? You give them 3 options. A, B, C. They need to write as quick as possible on their own or in pairs which one of these answers is the right one, and they show you their answer with a mini whiteboard. Then you have the second question, Où dort Nos le soir? A, B, C or D, and they give you the answer. So you can check their understanding of the chapter, and it's a good starter activity. And then you can make it a little bit harder and you give them an open question. Pourquoi Lou hésite toujours à quitter Nos? So there they can write a sentence answer, and you can check also their writing and their understanding, and you can always ask them to develop their answers. Okay, and then you move on to another open question. Quels sont les dangers auxquels fait face Nos? It depends how you want to check their understanding. They could be writing a few words, or they could be writing full sentences. It's up to you. This PowerPoint is available for free in my TES shop. I'm going to read a quote, and the students need to write down as quickly as possible the name of the character. It's a very good way of practicing the quote and finding out a bit more and consolidating your knowledge on characters. So this is an example of a PowerPoint that you can use to show quotes, and I call it the jeu des citations, the quote game. Qui dit quoi? Who says what? So for example, that's our first quote. La gare d'Austerlitz, j'y vais souvent. So linked to the book Nos et Moi, and they put the name of the character that it's linked to, and then the picture of the character appears. So this is a very good way to get the discussion started, to check their understanding of the book, of the characters. You can use a quote, they can debate, they can argue why they think it's linked to one character or another, and you can start a very nice discussion. So you could train them to analyze each of the quotes using analytical structures, and it's also a good way to make them improve their essay skill and a good speaking exercise. You would use again a PowerPoint presentation. You put some facts on each slide on the book, and they would have to write down vrai ou faux if you're teaching French as quickly as possible and show the answer. So it's a good way to practice their understanding of the book. So you could do that as a plenary on a chapter, or you could do that as a starter activity if you've asked them to read a chapter at home for homework. You come up with a sentence. Lou est précoce. So this is still based on the Nos et Moi book. So Lou is very intelligent. True or false? True, vrai, okay, and you always justify your answer. So what you can do, you can only ask your students to write vrai ou faux, so it goes quicker, and then you pick a team or a pair, and they need to justify from the book with a quote, or just develop their answer and explain why. Nous n'a pas de maison à elle. Vrai, okay, once again we justify. Lucas n'est pas violent. Faux, here we quote from a chapter, and we explain what happened in that chapter and how we can justify our answer. Here we say vrai, and we give a precise example. What about, instead of doing a boring vocab test on a piece of paper, you do it using mini whiteboards. So you've given them a list to learn at home, and you want to practice that they've actually learned it. So you take 5 minutes of your lesson, you say one word, they need to write it down in French, in Spanish, whatever, or the other way around. You say a French word, a Spanish word, and they need to write translation in English. They show you the answer. You can also ask them to keep the answer close to them so they all have time to write it. And you count to 3, 3, 2, 1, show me your answer. And so you can have another view of who's been revising their vocabulary and who hasn't. So that's a great way to make learning vocab fun. And I can tell you that they will ask for more vocab to learn if you give them a sticker as a reward, because stickers are still working for A-level. So this is a typical example of a vocab test that you could do with the mini whiteboards in the classroom. Number 1, I say the brain. They work on their own with their mini whiteboard and they write le cerveau. If they get the answer right, they put a point on top of their mini whiteboard. Then we carry on. Antisocial, asocial. So it's a very good way to have another view of who's learned their vocab and who hasn't as well. And then we turn around, we do French to English. Se ridiculiser, and they need to write the English. So I would give them about 20 words to learn and test them on 10. What about finding synonyms on a specific page or an entire passage? All the students have their books in front of them and you're going to say, for example, find me a synonym of rapide on this page. And they look in pairs or on their own. They write a synonym on the mini whiteboard. You ask them to hide it or they can just show it. The first one to show it gets a point and they write vite. And so it's a good way of practicing this skill, which is also required for the general A-level exam. Chapter 2 from the book Nous et moi. And students need to find the synonym in the text in that chapter of the word s'enlace. They find it, they can work in pairs or in groups because it's quite difficult when it's the first time you do this exercise, and they find the word s'embrasse. So usually the synonym will be in the same form as the word in the text. So here s'enlace is in the present, third person of the present, of the indicative, and in the book it will be the same. Les grands-mères, so this one is plural, and the word they need to find is les mamies. Des hurlements, plural again, des cris, la glace, la vitre, en l'air, lever, une cigarette, une clope. Okay, and then you can move on to something a bit more difficult and you do entire phrases. Je ne réaliserai pas, and it's in the conditional, so the phrase will be also in the conditional in the text. Je ne me rendrai pas compte. Observer les personnes, so it starts with an infinitive and the word we're looking for is regarder les gens and it starts with an infinitive as well. Okay, c'est devenu difficile, ça c'est compliqué, c'est pas la même chose, c'est pas pareil. So you use the same kind of style here, c'est pas. So that's a very good fun way of practicing a very difficult skill, which is to find synonym in a text, and it is required for the A-level exam. You could say, find me 5 verbs in the passé composé, in the past tense. They write choisi, j'ai cherché, j'ai trouvé, j'ai tiré, j'ai fait, and that's it. They write them down, they show it to you, and then it's a good way of asking questions. Can you tell me who wrote an irregular past participle? Who wrote a verb with avoir as an auxiliary verb? Who wrote a verb with être as an auxiliary verb? And then you can move on if you want to a grammar point. So you're linking the book to grammar as well, and you're still using a fun way. So you could still use the mini whiteboards and say, okay, who can write me now a list of irregular past participles? Blah, 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 blah. They show it to you, and that's my list of irregular past participles. What about finding a subjunctive? Okay, who can find me a subjunctive phrase? If you want to share as a comment how you use mini whiteboards, maybe you have more ideas, so please don't hesitate to share it as a comment. Thank you very much and have fun teaching lit.